levels in the room are two completely separate systems. You can hear me? Yeah. Only for the stream.
Good evening and welcome to the reversed room, which I tried to get done for the AGM because we can get more people in facing this way round than that way round. So I said, please can we have the AGM this way round? And they said, but the camera won't work. So we had the AGM facing that way round. But today we are experimenting. Today we're experimenting with a audio-visual equipment this evening, and if you want to go and watch this on YouTube somewhere else in the building, it'll be a useful test because this is appearing live on YouTube. It's something we've been trying to achieve for some while, and this evening we'll find out whether or not we've got it. So we haven't bought the equipment at the back yet. This is try before you buy. And we'll take a vote on this at about 5:35. So,
5:40.
5:40. Those of you who have been here before will know that this is our third German speaker, and this one I intend to keep to 35 minutes. Who knows that it's World Post Day? What is World Post Day? It's the anniversary of the establishment of the Universal Postal Union in 1874. And in 1969 they decided to have a World Post Day, and this being the 9th of the 9th of October, this being the 9th of October, it's World Post Day. Just a curious thing, who knows who the Director General of the Universal Postal Union is?
You do.
Correct. I certainly do. This is Bishar Abdirahman Hussain from Kenya is the Director General of the UPU. I think the UPU's got a good deal of time to make up in recognition terms. Can we have, please, the numbers in attendance this evening?
Yes, certainly, Chris.
I need to give you a microphone.
To
shall I?
No, you can't.
Good point.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's meeting of the Magic Circle. I possibly have the wrong jacket on. I'm pleased to say today we have 85 members and fellows in attendance. We have 12 guests and an amazing number from overseas. Amongst our overseas members, we have 5 from Germany, 1 from Belgium, 1 from Sweden and 2 from Australia. And amongst our guests, 3 from Germany, 1 from South Africa and 1 from Italy. And possibly there are others that I haven't mentioned. We have at least 2 members here for the first time this evening. Could I possibly ask them to stand up and let themselves be known? We have Mr. Heulmans from Germany.
Tobias.
Here we go. Welcome to your first meeting at the Royal. And Chris Forward from England. Welcome, Chris. May I ask if anyone else is here for their first meeting as a member? No? I think that about covers it, so I'll pass you back to Chris.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, we do have a lot of German guests here this evening, and it was actually a coincidence that the microphone is Sennheiser, which Dieter tells me is a very fine microphone, so we're using good equipment this evening. I have apologies for non-attendance from Bill Headley, who's in Adelaide, for Nigel Gooch, who's somewhere in the United States of America. I don't have any other apologies. And I think all we do now is to say, Dieter, the floor is yours, and it's a traditional 35 minutes. These are English minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. If the English minutes are comparable to the English miles compared to the German kilometers, then I have no problem whatsoever.
But all the rest of us do.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this speech tonight. And for me, it's a great honor to be able to be here. And the 2 main reasons why, for me, it's a great honor to be here today is because I think it's one of the first, if not the first, presentation of the founder of a company and a company itself. And second of all, that's the second reason, which has a sub-reason in it. The second reason is that it is a German company run by an Irish-born guy. Even though we're talking about a company, I would try to concentrate on not too commercial aspects. I have Chris here to kick me if I become too advertising for ourselves. And the reason that I'm here, or the fact that I'm here, I should thank very much a few people who are here in the room. Number 1 is Heinrich Mimberg, who really did his best to put together all these frames here. He's been working on these for more than a year now. He started last year. And he and I together decided on what would be in the frames, but it all goes back actually to his artwork, what we see here, what you were able to see today. I would also like to thank Wolfgang, who was here, Wolfgang Maaßen, who actually made the project come true. I mean, Wolfgang was the one who voluntarily dived into our files in the company, who interviewed Ingrid Lohrmann, who is let's say, the niece of Heinrich Kohler, who also interviewed at length Claudia Paten or Hartmut C. Schwenn. And he also, and this is something that maybe comes to a surprise to some of you here, he also interviewed a third, a direct relative of Heinrich Kohler, who's with us here tonight. It is the grandchild of Heinrich Kohler. It's Gabriele Dömer. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Actually, it shows you that already 100 years ago, people did do the same sins that some of us do today. Because Gabriele is the daughter of a former worker of Heinrich Kohler's in the company and not of his wife. But these kind of things happen. And we're happy to have her here. I would also like to welcome Philip Robinson, who helped me a lot in doing all the translation, all the corrections of my translations of the texts and the entire book, except for the first part that Chris King volunteered to do at the time. And yes, welcome to all these people. I really have to say thank you to that we can be here tonight and this project has come true. I would also like to welcome this evening Hartmut C. Schwen, who for 4 years was the owner of the company with his group between 1967 and 1970. And a warm welcome also to Carl Louis, who today is a co-owner of the company Heinrich Kohler, together with me and another shareholder. If there's anyone I forgot to thank, please tell me later at the wine, and I will take care of that. Ladies and gentlemen, from a monetary point of view, what you see here at the exhibit, it's not very important. I'm sure that you have not seen very many collections who had a lower money value. What we see here is, I think, it's 100 years of Heinrich Kohler in 12 frames. We could have filled 24 frames, so we had to make a selection. We had some hard times, and we hope that we made a nice selection, but there's no reason in stealing it. So that's why we left the keys in the beginning, but they vanish now. So, for a 5 o'clock display, I was told right in the beginning from Chris, I have 30 minutes, and I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, he gave me 30 minutes for 100 years. That's 18 seconds per year. Impossible. Impossible, so I thought that I won't be able to make it, so I'll try somehow differently. And I've already used up some of our precious time, so that's why I'm glad that I get 35 and not 30 minutes. And the frames that you see and the handout that you see tells you about the story of the company, of its development, of its ups and downs, and how things went in the last 101 years. So what I also did in the handout, I tried to put in 12 pages what exists already in a book of 500 pages. So if I left out some things, please, my apologies. So I had to focus my speech on something, and I wanted to focus my speech today on the protagonists in their times. So I'm talking about the owners, or the managers, or the leaders, or the decision makers within Heinrich Kohler at their times. And I wanted to try to focus on what did they do to make the company different from the other companies in their time? So let me begin with Heinrich Kohler himself. And Heinrich Kohler was there from 1913 until 1945. And I think there are 3 very important points that made Heinrich Kohler different from other companies. That was 1, his great experience. Number 2, his side activity as a dealer. So he wasn't only running auctions, he was also a dealer, a very active, very good dealer, and his expertising service that I will come back to each point in the course of this little speech. So here we see Heinrich Kohler on his desk in Paris. They opened up the office already in 1904 together with a guy called Gilbert, and they started dealing in 1904 together. They were specialists in fiscal stamps, and they were buying and selling fiscal stamps. They made catalogs of fiscal stamps. And it was in 1908 when they did their first auction. And in 1908, it was not by coincidence, but it was a nice story that they were able to sell the, at that time, very important collection of a guy called Koch from Gießen, not far from Wiesbaden nowadays. This Mr. Koch was a person where Heinrich Kohler was able to spend some time during his apprenticeship sorting out the collection of this industrial who had little time to do it himself. And it shows you years later, he comes to Heinrich Kohler and Gilbert to Paris, which was a center at that time for stamp auctions besides London. And actually he had met Gilbert in London. So Koch came to the 2 guys to auction his catalog sometime later. Another important collection that was auctioned later in 1909 was of Monsieur Mirabeau. You see the front page of the catalog here. And so before Heinrich Kohler organized his first auction in 1913, he had already done 40 auctions in Paris. As I say, Paris and London in those times were the big place for auctions. During this time that he gathered experience, he also had great connections with people. I say here a letter from Colombia. It's not true, it's a letter from Nicaragua. So they already had contacts overseas, abroad, here's a letter from Fazel Nasser, also a known collector from Zanzibar. So this experience that he had also meant that he had contacts that other auctioneers in Germany for sure didn't have. The other point I mentioned in the beginning was his side activity as a stamp dealer. Long before Heinrich Kohler started auctioning stamps, he was a stamp dealer, and he was buying and selling stamps, and he was not only looking for German stamps, as all the others were, he was also buying stamps from European or overseas countries. Here we see advertisements of his looking for stamps. Here we have an advertisement from his Kohler's Philatelistische Magazin. In 1925, Heinrich Kohler started to issue this magazine. The idea was to have 4 magazines a year. By the year 1936, which meant 11 years, he hadn't published 44 magazines as planned. He had published 11 magazines. So that shows us that already in those times, in the 1920s, time was something that was not easy to control. Here we see Heinrich Kohler's first price list as a stamp dealer. Normally his adverts were always focused on buying stamps, as today in the auction houses on getting consignments. He was buying stamps. There were very little offers we see from his side. But we see here his first price list of 1950. It's the first time I came across one 3 months ago. And it shows you also a photo plate of this price list. And if you compare these photo plates with the photo plates he has in his auction catalogs, you will see that these are much nicer, much finer, much better quality, which makes me think probably he was devoting more time because he had more time. He was not pushed to issue this price list at a certain moment, or it was his own material and he tried to treat this better than that of foreign people, of consigners. The third point I would like to get to is his expertising service. I think by far this is the most important standalone point of Heinrich Kohler in his times. There was no other auctioneer in Germany who had an expertising service. And Heinrich Kohler already started to offer this service actively to his customers, to his buying and consigning customers in 1920. But at that time, he actually stuck to his customers who were able to use this expertising service. It was only later in 1926, after the 2 well-known experts, Thier and Glasewald, had passed away, that then he saw his way free to offer an expertising service for anyone. So he would expertise all kinds of stamps, not only Germany, but all kinds of stamps that he was aware of. And it's not too many expertisings of Heinrich Kohler we come across today that are incorrect. So actually, this expertising service was also based on the register card index that he had started building up in 1913 and is still today part of the company's big assets. This is a picture of today. I have no pictures of the time, but we have many cards that come from the time of Heinrich Kohler. With these cards, with his register card index, he could keep record of where were stamps auctioned, what did they look like before the repair, which collections were they in, and these kind of things. And that helped him a lot in his expertising for his certificates. He also expertised for other experts, like this is Walter Opitz, a specialist of Saxony, and Heinrich Kohler expertised for him, in this case, 200 taxi stamps. This was, at the time, the done thing. People just exchanged expertizations themselves. Here we see an advert that he had in his catalogs, but also in his magazine, his Philatelistische Magazin, where he was offering his expertising services at certain prices that he gives here. This is something very interesting. Already Thier, who was the expert that I mentioned just a minute ago, had developed a sort of marking system for stamps or covers that he has expertised, and he would mark in a special way that the the certificate or the stamp itself or the cover would show what are we talking about. Are we talking about imperforated stamps, perforated stamps, overprinted stamps, new prints, whatever. And Heinrich Kohler developed this expertizing marks in a way that the position of the mark would give you some information about the quality of the stamp. The higher the mark, the worse the quality. And this actually way of certifying and using the marks on the back of the stamps is today still used by the German expert association, whereby which one must say that this is becoming less and less popular because people simply don't like those foreign marks on the back of their covers, which is okay, but at the time this was revolutionary. Here we see a little letter from the Royal Philatelic Society of London Expert Committee from Titford to Heinrich Kohler, now acknowledging the receipt of a return of the 2 Mercier stamps that had been submitted by Heinrich Kohler, and on the other hand, the Royal Philatelic Society London Expert Committee also sent stamps to Heinrich Kohler for his certification. And there is a long list of letters going back and forth. At least between 1928 and 1938, Bill Headley was kind enough to send me whatever he had in his archive. What I think is a very nice thing about Heinrich Kohler and his expertizing service is that his motto was, every expert makes mistakes, and the best expert is the one who makes the fewest mistakes. I think there are many experts around nowadays. If they use this motto, things could be much, much easier at times. So these are the 3 fundamental things I think are standalones of Heinrich Kohler, and that is his experience he had before he came to Germany that no other auctioneer had, his expertizing service, as I have pointed out here, and the second point that I mentioned just a minute ago was the fact that, what was the fact? Okay, so let's come to Henriette Schmidt-Kohler and Henriette Grosse-Kohler, 1945 to 1966. Retrospectively, for me, this sounds a very long time for them having run this company, but Henriette, who was Heinrich's daughter, took over command immediately after her father had died in 1955, together with her mother, Anna, who then passed away, but Henriette was basically the player. And in the beginning, her husband Schmidt was there beside her, and then later Grosse, a German-American who came over. I think the 2 strong points of Henriette were, first of all, Heinrich's old contacts. The war was over, but the old contacts had to be established again. There were difficult times, but this is one very strong point of Henriette. And the point is, believe it or not, the sale of a 1-penny post office of Mauritius in 1952. Times were very difficult, as I say, after the Second World War. In the 1940s and the beginning of 1950s, stamps was like a currency, collectible stamps. So for auctioneers who would receive consignments and sell them later, it was rather difficult to run the business against the dealers who used stamps like a currency. It was like money. It did mean that we had a decade of really hefty difficulties for the auction companies, not only Kohler, but also the others. Their performance was not as it was maybe before the war. Here we see Henriette together with her later husband, Grosse. He came from America in the end of the 1940s, or the beginning of the 50s, sorry, and they fell in love immediately. And Henriette, being a widow, she was free to marry Grosse. And Grosse was also a philatelist, a keen stamp collector, who always was an add-on to the company with his knowledge. I mentioned earlier on, the second point was the sale of a 1-penny post office of Mauritius. I mean, believe it or not, this stamp did change life quite substantially for the Kohler company that had become a normal company among other companies and was fighting for survival. And when this came up, this stamp, it was really a big thing for the market. Actually, it fetched, at the time, it fetched some 26,000 marks, which at the time would buy a house in the city. So it was a big thing. And from the moment that this stamp was sold by Kohler, Henriette Grosse called her company no longer only the oldest stamp auction in Germany, but also the leading stamp auction in Germany, which by today's standards would be a little bit difficult because you would have many people complaining. But at the time, with people like Grobe or Moorman or Ebel around, it worked, and it worked for a while. Here we see one of the advertisements in one of the German stamp magazines. As you see, there's not too much material in the archives about this period of time, but I think with these 2 points, and that is the fact that Henriette could build on the old contacts of her father and the sale of the Mauritius post office, 1 penny red, I think that's quite substantial. We come to the next period, Hartmut C. Schwenn, from 1967 to 1970. And now I must be very careful because the gentleman is in the room and I have to be careful that I don't make any nonsense here. But I think we could, like Hartmut Schwenn, I would put 2 points here. One is his outstanding talent of marketing. And number 2, the hiring of Volker Paten. We must see this in the perspective that when Hartmut Schwenn bought Kohler, and he bought Kohler, if I'm right, because it was not too expensive. It wasn't something he really wanted at the time, but it was a fair deal. It was okay for him, and the structure of the company was all right. But Hartmut Schwenn was much more concentrated, and rightly so, to his company that has already been running auctions from the beginning of the 60s very, very successfully in Germany. And Hartmut Schwenn's big talent was to bring his stamp auctions and his sales into the media. And if I say into the media, I don't mean the stamp magazine X, Y, or Z. I mean into national television, into national newspapers, and all his sales were real events. I mean, here we see the armored security service bringing the lots to an auction or somewhere. This was shown on television. This was shown in magazines. So people really believed in stamp collecting. I mean, this was something that this was a revival of stamp collecting. Nobody before Hartmut Schwenn had this kind of marketing tools and used them. But Heinrich Kohler was not his focus. His focus was Schwenn. But what I think he did very, very intelligently, retrospectively, is that he hired Volker Paten. And Volker Paten, as we all know, later came on and took over the company. But Heinrich Kohler at this time I think he was a very, very good manager for Hartmut Schwenn, bringing structure into the company, having a good reporting system, having everything laid out correctly, auctions run timely, and he would do very good and qualified descriptions and everything. And this is something that I think that Hartmut Schwenn valued very, very much. Something else we have to say about Hartmut Schwenn is that he even managed to bring the president of the German Federal Republic into a photo with him and looking at stamps. Or a guy like Franz Josef Strauß that you all maybe know. Very important also for our stamp field was that with the contact to Franz Josef Strauß at the time, Hartmut Schwenn managed to fight against the increase of the value-added tax for stamps, which at the time and up to the end of last year was privileged. And at the time, the government wanted to stop that, wanted the increase, which would have meant a net 10% increase for prices for stamps. And with the help of Hartmut Schwenn working for the Association of the German Stamp Auctioneers, this was fought against and successfully. This brings us to Volker Paten and his wife. After Hartmut Schwenn then, or from the Schwenn company was dissolved, and Volker Paten managed to buy the Kohler company out of the conglomerate. And Together with his wife, Claudia, he was with the company for 30 years. And I think the 3 points we must point out for him is his talent for personal contacts within the philatelic scene, his activities in philatelic associations, and number 3, the card register index, something we talked about just 5 minutes ago. Or was it 7 or 9, Chris? You know much better than I do. His talent for personal contacts was just fantastic. I mean, Volker Paten always celebrated auctions. He didn't run auctions or organize them, he celebrated them. Here we see him together with Jan Heus, whom you, I suppose, all know. Here, Wolfgang Jakubek or Hans-Georg Schlegel. Here we see his wife together with 2 honored guests. Here we have Claudia Paten with John Boker at one of the parties. So Volker Paten was a guy, everybody liked him and everybody accepted his knowledge about stamps, his perfectionism and his reliability. And the number 2 I wanted to get at is his activities in philatelic associations. Between 1978 and 1990, Volker Paten was the president of the German Association of Stamp Auctioneers. The Association of the Stamp Auctioneers was sort of something that came out of the Stamp Dealers Association. The Stamp Auctioneers thought that their interests would be better presented in an association of their own. And Volker was the president of this for 11 years. And he really worked strongly together with people like Heinz Jäger, who was the president of the Collectors Association, or also the president of the Dealers Association, putting together all the interests of these associations, but also fighting things when there were arguments. And Volker's voice was always heard, respected, and followed. Number 3 that I mentioned was the card register index. I mentioned earlier on that already Heinrich Kohler had started building up the card register index for items, especially of German collectible areas that were of big importance for the collectible areas. He made all kinds of notes, he made photocopies of the auction catalogs, he was able to find pedigrees, he was able to see in which collections were these items before, and Volker Paten perfectionized this, and he was very, very hard working on this, and he found students to work on them. And this register card index actually helped to bring in a collection that I think this catapulted the company back to world-renowned knowledge by people. That is the John Boker collection of the old German states, which was sold in the course, I think, of 15 years. There was 18 auctions and a total of something like 60 million D-Mark at the time. So why did Volker Paten get this collection, not somebody else? And I believe, that one of the main points was that Volker Paten was able to talk to John Boker about his collection on one level. Why? Because he had the register card index. He had collected all kind of information about very, very important items that were in John's collection. And I think that at the end was the factor, the final argument that made John Boker go to Volker Paten and not to one of the competitors. So these, I think, are the standalone points of the era of Volker Paten. That is his really good contacts within the philatelic associations and the philatelic market, the card register index, and then we come to Heinrich Kohler today. This is the point which, for me, was very, very difficult to cover. I will just give you a few things on what I think we do today, not necessarily worse than the others. I think we have nice catalogs. I think we have, with the creation of the Edition d'Or that Carl and I together created in 2006, I think we're doing something for philately. We are showing stamp collections of the highest level that people can still see in 20, 30, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. And we are in time with our global philatelic network with 5 offices worldwide. I think that these are things that count for us. I don't want to go into detail too much here because I will bring myself into trouble. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to thank you for your attention. And I look forward to seeing you all for our presentation of our 200th anniversary. And for my part, I hope, Chris, that by then there will be a lift installed because I won't be able to walk up these stairs. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Wolfgang, you're going to come and say thank you. You thought I was kidding yesterday. So just if you would just thank Dieter for the presentation. You didn't believe me. I said to him last night you're going to be Come on, Wolfgang, stand up and say a few words.
A few words about Dieter.
No, about Dieter's splendid presentation.
Sorry.
Okay, as you perhaps know, I published a book last year about Heinrich Kohler. And as some of you, only few I suppose, know, my personal hobby is philatelic history. And I started to work about Heinrich Kohler more than 10 years ago. And I came along with the idea perhaps 2 or 3 years ago to Dieter and Karl, and I said, well, now is the time, I think the right time to publish a real book about the family. I didn't know at that time how much work it really was. As the most of us, when they start, they don't know what they have to expect. But I must admit, I never had, with no other book, such enjoyable experiences, really. For example, Dieter mentioned Mrs. Dömer. At the time when I wrote the story, when I made the researches in archives and so on, I didn't know that Kohler had 3 girls. One day, it was shortly before the book was finished, really, he found me and said, well, Wolfgang, there was a lady, and she said, well, my name is Gabi Dömer, and I'm the grandchild of Heinrich Kohler. And I said, oh, okay, crazy, because as journalists, you often met people who phoned you and I said, well, I'm the king or the pope or anything like that else. sorry, Mrs. Dömer. I didn't believe it. I must admit, I didn't believe it. But then he said, well, she sends me some messages and informations, and after a short while, we knew it was true. It was a fantastic experience for an author to bring something new to the world, that the family is still alive. Because we thought they're all dead, all gone. And so I had quite a lot of experiences with people, for example, with Mr. Schwen, who I learned personally to know, and we had a lot of discussions and very, very good speeches. It came to some kind of a book where there's a mixture. It has 100 footnotes. Footnotes, that the right word, yeah? Footnotes. They're more for scientific research. But the story itself is let's say, it's a story. The typical journalist writes the story so that every reader, or each reader, is fascinated. It's a thrilling story. It's some kind of sex and crime, sometimes. Yeah, perhaps. It has chapters. You really, well, I was fascinated of them when I read them today. I'm still fascinated because this company is not a normal company. It's not only because of the 100 years, it's because of the persons, yes, the persons, which are so different, really. And I must admit, I had quite a lot of support. I've done the work as author myself, but I had the support of the company to have a look to all the archives. We found quite a lot, which was not known before. I had support from other philatelists, I don't know, is Philip Robinson here? No. Oh, Philip's. I had support from Philip with the English translation, of course, because I'm not a native speaker. You can imagine that I can't write English in his style. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, I had support of the company, which said after publishing the German original version, well, we would like to have that in English too. So thank you, Dieter. Thank you, Karl. Thank all the others which I mentioned before for your wonderful help. And I'm really a bit proud as author to have done that kind of work. Thank you.
I think Frau Dürmer had some ephemera as well and various other things from the company in the past, which had not been seen before. It's normal now to open the proceedings to questions. Does anybody have any questions of Dieter? Yes, please, John Sacker.
I do. Dieter, you've got a fine company that has a wonderful historic record of stamps. It's been auctioneer, it's been dealer. I wonder if you would express an opinion, because I don't know the answer, but one often hears that a dealer needs to collect to understand, but at the same time the conflict is very considerable. Do you and Karl have a view as to whether people running your sort of company should collect or only collect information?
Wolfgang will be publishing the book shortly to answer this question. Sorry.
That's a tough one, but I think, and the experience I've made in our auction house that I've been running now for nearly 14 years, it's so important that the guys can feel what their customers out there want. That brings us so much nearer to the customer and makes us understand what things are about. It also means, of course, a little bit of a risk that either they go too deeply into the matter and don't get the auction catalog finished, but they can work longer hours. Or they fall in love with the stuff and spend more than they make in the company. But I bear those risks, and I think I prefer it the way it is. They have to be near to the stamps. I mean, both our senior philatelists, also Karl a little bit, and myself, we all collect stamps. I mean, and I don't see how it would work without it.
It's a difficult issue.
Yep.
Francis.
First of all, congratulations on the presentation, which I thought was superb.
Thank you very much.
Secondly, you mentioned John Boker. And John Boker was one of the people I actually judged with in 1987, so a long time ago. He's the one that gave Alan Huggins a large vermeil instead of a gold. I think it was Alan's first large vermeil.
Not many people would have had the courage to do that.
I challenged it actually and didn't win, but never mind. The one thing about John Boker was he always claimed that when he put together his collection, he actually knew every single stamp he wanted to have in his collection. Did he have access to your register before he started his collection, or only after? Can you remember?
He used stamp catalogs, auction catalogs, in order to put together what he wanted. I don't think he used a card register, but Karl, you might know better. Ja, genau. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Karl confirms what I was saying. He used stamp auction catalogs. Of that, he made a list that you might call a register, and then off he went. And and he went strong. And while we mentioned, excuse me, Chris, but while we mentioned John Boker, I forgot something very, very important, and I would like to apologize for that. Today, under us, we have James Bendon, who did all the translations of all the John Boker catalogs for Volker Patent at the time. I only learned this early on from Wolfgang, so that's why I forgot to mention this. But James, please forgive me, and thank you for all you did help Volker bring this company to what it is today.
Further questions, please. write a reply, Alan.
Well, I'm not quite certain where Francis got his information on this, but I can't for the life of me remember what the hell the exhibit was, but that isn't what I was going to ask. Dieter, John Boker has obviously been an extremely outstanding collector of German material, and what has been said is absolutely true, that he made a list of what he wanted, and of course, once you get a bit of experience, that is a good thing to do. You try and get the best stuff first. But he only ever had the best stuff. And I can remember, though I never collected it, the catalogues that you produced, and they were really excellent. But the pictures were brilliant, and they are a historical record of a magnificent collection. So I congratulate the company on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan.
The thing about the Boker catalogues is, where's half of that stuff gone to? Like,
Half or all of it?
Well, I look through the Schleswig-Holstein and the Lübeck and think, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen this.
You need, John Boker was one of the last very, very big general collector of all the all German states. And all the material is now distributed among many, many specialized philatelists, like people who collect Lübeck, or people who collect Schleswig-Holstein, or people who collect Baden or Bavaria or the other countries.
I still can't find half of it. Further questions, please? Yes, please, Alan.
In a fairly short time, you two guys have put a company, with due respect to those here, on the map. Despite what you've been saying, the growth and changes that you've coped with, very few other houses would have been able to. But today, there's a thing called electronics and the computer and systems. Where do you see the changes coming in the future? Because you're driving one of the leading houses and you have a big overhead. Do you see a conflict with modern changes that are happening now?
Not so much. At the moment, I see a period of transfer, a period of change, because I see that with every auction catalog we produce, we get people asking us not to send the printed catalog anymore, that people want to go online, view the catalog online. And also the participation in the auction. We see more and more people going on the online live bidding system, although we sometimes have breakdowns, but we also had breakdowns of telephone lines in the past. So we can cope with that. And what I do see is that the auctions are concentrated more and more on the high-end stuff, and a lot of the medium and the standard material is sold over platforms like eBay or these kind of places. And that will continue like that. It will go on like this. That I think in a period of 5 or 10 years, you won't be able to find standard material anymore in auctions. But it's something we cannot stop. I mean, it's the way it is. So auction catalogs will be thinner, and you will have more time to look at them, Alan.
Do we have any further questions, please? Super. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Dieter. You can
Pleasure.
Please be seated. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten to do something as usual.
Now I'm seated.
Stand up. We have to present you with the plaquette. So, this doesn't say Heinrich Kohler, it says Dieter Michelson.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
we're going to have to figure this one out, how to do the microphones and so on. So I have to present you with this, that hand, I think. And
Thank you very much.
Super.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris. Appreciate
Cheers.
that. Thank you.
Oh, do you want- Yeah, we're going to have to fix this microphone for future events. Okay. The meeting is the 6th of November. It's at 1 o'clock, British West Indies Study Circle Diamond Jubilee. Promises to be an excellent event. I'm sorry there's such a long gap between these two meetings, but Zindelfingen, to which the Royal's been invited, and we have nearly 40 members attending, plus a royal reception, has intervened. So my apologies for that. So British West Indies Study Circle, 6th of November. I have to thank John Crow again for his Australia in the Olympic Games. And the Iceland stamps, 1st, 30th of November, Iceland stamps 1873 to 1945 will be in these frames here. Those of you who weren't here last week, just to draw to your attention the book which commemorates the generosity of members and fellows who gave money for the appeal to help with renovation and IT upgrades. This was launched in 1997 and closed in 2000, and we list the names of the donors, and we'll continue to list those by turning the pages over the course of the next 9 meetings. So thank you. Please have a look at that. We still have places available for the Crawford seminar on the 21st of October. This is on paper conservation. Please tell the office. We have, I've been asked to tell you about a judging seminar which is going to be held in Hitchin, 14th and 15th of November. Please see David Alford about this judging seminar. And lastly, in about 10 minutes' time, there'll be wine and snacks in the large library, as ever, and we look forward to seeing you downstairs. And of course, I have one last thing to do, as usual. It's like Kojak, isn't it? And just one more thing. It wasn't Kojak, it was Columbo. Yeah. We have here, it's Columbo, yeah, absolutely. We have here the English version of Wolfgang's book. As you can see, it's been produced with Teutonic thoroughness, as ever. This is actually slightly different. It's not just that it's in English, but it actually has all of the footnotes. The German version is missing a footnote. As I was trying to translate it, looking for this footnote missing at the bottom of the page, it took me some while to figure out what had happened, but this has got all of the footnotes. This book is for sale. It's James. Okay, turn it off. So this book is for sale. If you see, what, Frank, see you? See the office. How much is it? £70. It actually is it goes into a lot of the byways and highways of European philately in the century from 1913. We have a dozen here, or 15? We've got 10 left, and if you want to reserve one of those, I should do so reasonably quickly. They will be for sale, I think, on the website in due course. And now it really is time for me to say that we wine and snacks in the large library from 6 o'clock. So thanks very much for your attendance. Thank you very much for reminding me again, Frank, of something that I've missed out. I'm very grateful. And we'll see you all downstairs. And thanks very much indeed for your attendance. Super.